When you picture ancient Rome, you probably picture power. Marble columns, legions, emperors draped in purple. But history has a way of showing its ugly side when the temperature drops. Because every winter in ancient Rome was a quiet catastrophe, and if you weren't rich, it could easily be your last. This is what winter actually felt like in the city that ruled the world. By the 1st century AD, Rome had over 1 million people crammed inside its walls. Most of them lived in towering apartment blocks called insulae, Latin for islands. They were poorly built, always overcrowded, and in winter, absolutely miserable. The higher your floor, the poorer you were, and the colder. There was no central heating, no insulation, no glass in most windows, just wooden shutters that let in every gust of cold air. And unlike the comfortable image of Romans lounging in togas, most people didn't even own enough clothing to stay warm. Wealthy Romans burned wood in braziers, portable metal fire baskets. But wood was expensive, and for the poor, it was often out of reach. Some burned animal dung or scraps of charcoal. Others burned nothing at all and simply endured. The rich had a different solution entirely. They built their floors over hollow chambers where hot air could circulate, a system called the hypocaust. Essentially, underfloor heating invented 2,000 years ago. Wealthy Romans also wore multiple layers, tunics, togas, wool socks, for wraps. Some even stuffed their clothing with raw wool for insulation. Meanwhile, slaves who worked outdoors, the builders, the water carriers, the field laborers, were expected to keep working, no matter the temperature. Winter didn't just bring cold. It brought hunger. Rome depended on massive grain shipments from North Africa and Egypt, but Mediterranean seas became too dangerous to sail in winter. Supply lines froze. Grain prices surged. The poor ate less or didn't eat at all. The Roman government did provide a grain dole, the annona, but it only covered adult male citizens. Women, children, slaves, and foreigners were on their own. Cold and hunger made the body weak. And Roman winter was a breeding ground for disease. Pneumonia, typhus, dysentery from contaminated water sources, tuberculosis. Ancient Romans had no antibiotics, no germ theory, no real understanding of how disease spread. Doctors prescribed wine, figs, and prayer. Those who could afford it. Everyone else simply hoped to outlast winter. Child mortality surged every winter. The elderly disappeared quietly. The city kept moving, and Rome counted its dead in spring. So, who actually survived a Roman winter? The ones with warm floors, stocked pantries, fur-lined clothes, and slaves to tend their fires. For everyone else, winter was a test that exposed everything Rome tried to hide. The poverty, the inequality, the paper-thin line between civilization and suffering. The greatest empire in the ancient world couldn't protect its own people from the cold. And for millions of Romans, winter wasn't a season. It was a sentence. But there is a cruel twist to this story that history doesn't always mention. The only thing the poor could do to fight the cold was the same thing that could kill them just as fast. Fire. Insulae were death traps. 6 stories of dry wood, packed with desperate people burning anything they could find for warmth. 1 tipped brazier. 1 forgotten oil lamp. That was all it took. Rome had no fire brigade, not a real one. And by the time the vigiles, the night watch, arrived, entire blocks were already ash. The rich built their homes in stone and marble, set apart from the crowded blocks. For them, fire was a distant spectacle. For the poor, it was simply another way winter collected its toll. Every spring, Rome woke up and assessed the damage. The bodies of the poor were collected from insulae stairwells, from alley corners, from the banks of the Tiber. No ceremony. No record. Just gone. Mass graves outside the city walls, called puticuli, received the nameless dead. The slaves. The freedmen. The forgotten. Rome would repair itself. Markets would reopen. Ships would sail again from Carthage and Alexandria loaded with grain. The empire would look, from a distance, like nothing had happened. But the people who had survived knew better. They would spend the warmer months quietly preparing, hoarding food, patching walls, sewing extra layers, already dreading the season that would come again. Rome was eternal, they said. But eternity looked a lot different depending on which floor of the insulae you lived on.